The fastest mode of travel between any two given points is a straight line. How will you create your straight line? We live in a world made for corporations, run by corporations, and built for corporations. Everything in gaming is becoming owned by less and less people every day, and big companies want to convince you that it is in your best interest to not own what you purchased. It's dystopian. In conjunction, they always want to know what you're doing in your game and how you're playing. This is to continue the filling of the slop trough that is AAA gaming. In 2008, Mirror's Edge was released, easily one of the most unique games of its time, but more importantly, for its genre, the platformer. It's not to say that platformers in the first person didn't exist before or after this, but just not in the style with this level of focus and this level of immersion. It's not to say that Mirror's Edge is perfect, far from it actually. But what it does is combine a unique approach to level design, platforming, and storytelling into an unforgettable experience. Mirror's Edge, at its core, is a first-person parkour platformer with light puzzle and action elements. Mirror's Edge follows the principles of momentum in both its movement and level design. My favorite part about this is just how many ways the game often gives you to get from point A to point B. The game often sets up the fastest way between level checkpoints as a straight line, and I appreciate this. This isn't to say that the straight line is the easiest approach to moving through a stage, it often isn't, and it's typically the hardest route for the player to take. Much of the time when you fail at doing the optimal route for speed, you're getting the optimal route for safety. This is often the slowest and easiest route. Mirror's Edge is a very minimalist game. This applies to everything from the art style to the gameplay loop. The way levels often mark progress is through the placement of red objects and doors. This denotes one of the places that the devs intend for you to go, usually with doors getting you to the next checkpoint or segment of the level proper. The red object contrasted by the mostly white landscape gives the player the freedom to essentially determine many possible routes at the same time, from a distance and in real time. Maybe a route appears before you because one of the white objects fades to red, opening an option you didn't think you had beforehand. This is how the game's level design, as simple as it can be, pulls you in. So interesting. The moveset in Mirror's Edge focuses on linking actions together, boosting your momentum. Once you get going, you sort of enter this flow state, where you're moving action to action and focus on moving forward mechanically rather than strategically. This is actually one of the first games I'd ever played where I realized something like this was happening, especially when I was younger. The easiest way I can describe it is like Ultra Instinct from Dragon Ball. You minimize your thought process so every action is as quick and precise as possible. The only other games that I felt this within at the time had to be Sonic games, and that's because those games live and die by their flow state. Wall running allows you to keep moving forward while also crossing large gaps. Crouching allows you to get over obstacles that your feet might hit or allows you to roll so that you don't stop moving or take damage after a steep fall. A tool as simple as jumping allows for general platforming, climbing, as well as sneak rush attacks on enemies, and then punches and kicks allow you to take down enemies as well as break through doors. The quick turn allows you to jump and scale walls much akin to traditional platformers' wall jumps, just with a more realistic parkour feel. Every action you can take matters and can determine how smooth or clunky your gameplay is. In this regard, Mirror's Edge does hurt itself. There are times where the game's controls somewhat break, require a weird level of precision, or don't make it obvious on where to go. This happens mostly when grabbing ledges or using a mechanic where you boost off marked items in the environment. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes you miss ledge grabs when you shouldn't. Sometimes you hop over things when you mean to boost off of them. In general, the game doesn't control the best, but when it controls well, it's smooth as butter. This also extends to combat. For a game made by DICE, a studio known for making the Battlefield series, the gunplay is utter dog shit, especially on controller. There's no aim assist on controller, and turning down the sensitivity affects your ability to move while platforming. Enemies are also not well designed. On one hand, it feels purposeful so that the escape is the best option in many instances, but there are other situations, especially at the end of the game, where you have to engage in combat. I just feel like this is really where the game needed a bit more polish. It's really good as is, it's just that the game would be nigh untouchable if these things were cleaned up. But let's talk about the presentation of Mirror's Edge. In all honesty, I feel like the presentation of Mirror's Edge is what carries it and brings the whole package together. The music, the art, the animated cutscenes, the sense of atmosphere and scale. These things all come together to create one of gaming's most unique worlds. Not fantastical, not surreal, but a reflection of our own world. And honestly, the path it has taken through the lens of a video game. I usually wouldn't put story in this section, but I feel like it fits here for this game in particular. Mirror's Edge has animated cutscenes and a minimalistic art style. These are somewhat presented like scenes from a television show, and that's honestly what Mirror's Edge feels like in some regards. Each chapter feels contained yet still a part of the bigger picture, like a TV drama. Character dialogue is cheesy yet genuine, and despite the melodrama, I never felt like any of it was cringe or too much. Mirror's Edge follows Faith Connors, a runner that is attempting to save her sister from persecution after she gets framed for the murder of the mayor. She's helped by her mentor, Merc, and must face everything from law enforcement to private security firms grasping for power within the authoritarian city in order to clear her sister's name and save her from taking a fall for an unknown assassin. I said Faith was a runner. What is a runner, you ask? Runners act as private couriers in the city that act outside of the government's control. They are illegal and often hunted down by law enforcement. Their existence hinges on the fact that the government has control and surveillance over everything. They've banned everything from smoking and drinking to private mail. Runners allow private entities to subvert Big Brother, and because of this freedom, they are outlawed. The story in this game is very good. Not the most original, but definitely good. Mirror's Edge excels at making the protagonist likable, capable, and interesting. Faith and her sister Kate are functionally two sides of the same coin. Kids that grew up with parents that were part of the resistance. After the death of their mother and their father's subsequent spiral, Faith decided to live on the streets and Kate chose to stay home. In the end, Faith becomes a runner after trying to steal from Mert, and Kate becomes a cop. Without spoiling too much, I feel like given how short Mirror's Edge is, the story is superb. It's the one thing that will always keep you coming back. Even characters with seemingly minor roles contribute heavily to the plot, and the game goes out of its way to combine the story and gameplay in a unique way. The only real cuts you get are between chapters, and those are the animated cutscenes. In-game cutscenes smoothly transition in and out of gameplay, making the efforts you make in the game feel that much more important. The stylized 3D graphics that are both minimal and highly detailed creates one of the most visually stunning games of its era. High-frequency detail such as roughness via normal maps is present in most scenes, and the materials work is great. When you combine this with some really good baked lighting for the time, the game looks a lot more detailed than it lets on. On the other hand, the devs opted to use a very minimal color palette when actually giving objects color. For example, in most if not all the stages, there's a white or gray base paint to everything. Then the sky is almost always bright blue with some exceptions. The devs then decided that each area is either going to be associated with red, blue, green, and this orangish yellow. This makes every area feel unique but the same. It's functionally the end of capitalist greed in the form of architecture and art. We see this phenomenon in real life, not only in our architecture, but even things as simple as logos. The crossroads between a hyper-capitalist and Orwellian society. I played this game at a 1440p resolution, and while the 3D elements do a decent job of scaling beyond 1080p, the 2D elements do not. I just think the game's built-in scaler does not like 1440p because 2D elements were sharper at 1080p and looked super low res at 1440p. And while the character models are on the lower poly side, they are still very stylized and well detailed for the time. Mirror's Edge also blesses the players with an amazing soundtrack by composer Solar Fields. The game uses progressive and trance styles of electronic music liberally. In every instance, it feels like the music was wisely crafted to elevate the art around it. The ambient sounds mixed in with the minimalist approach to production honestly is superb. This isn't to say that Mirror's Edge doesn't have some faster paced tracks, far from it. The use of more intense drum and bass combined with some more hectic rhythms for chase and battle scenes amplifies the intensity of combat and chase sequences. There's also some jungle thrown in when shit really hits the fan. Every track in the game feels basically purpose-built for this game, and I don't think there's really another game with this sound signature. This isn't to say that other games don't use electronic music, especially progressive or drum and bass, but there's a fluidity that Mirror's Edge has in transitioning between tracks and genres that is almost album-like that separates it from the pack. Listen to some here. Mirror's Edge is honestly a fantastic product of its time. This is one of those games that you should play even if you don't beat it. It does have some holdups. The gameplay, while solid, can sometimes crumble under its own ambition and has some dated gameplay design elements. This is especially visible in its control scheme for gamepad/console and the lack of aim assist. And while the visuals are still amazing and still decent by today's standards, some of the low poly models don't hold up to higher resolutions. Overall though, Mirror's Edge really puts heavy emphasis on players understanding its parkour system. The sense of freedom the game gives you via level designs is not something that you see in too many platformers. The unique mechanic of runner's vision and slow-mo really get the player invested and enhances the flow state of running, jumping, and even in lesser combat sequences. It's almost a mirror of the story and what runners represent. The unique and great presentation of the story and game in general puts above many, but not all, of its contemporaries. And this is saying a lot considering how good 2008 was for gaming. The music, graphics, and art style coalesce into something uniquely its own. If you're looking for a game to play in the sea of AAA slop from recent years, I believe you should go back and play Mirror's Edge, a game that really is indicative of what gaming was like in the time. It's on PC via Steam and Game Pass, as well as Xbox back compat. I personally played this playthrough with a gamepad, but in the past I've played with both, but keyboard and mouse is just as valid, and to be honest, it makes shooting a bit more bearable. But with all that being said, this has been Jet Set Chatting. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. I'd like to hit 500 subs by the end of the year. Remember, Hot Faraga turns to Cold Blizzaga. Chill out with some of my other videos. Follow your boy on Twitter, X, and Blue Sky. Peace, and have a good one.